The electric vehicle startup Fisker has now officially filed for bankruptcy. It's over for them. Marcus Brownlee made a video that basically killed Fisker, but also the truth is that they were doomed long before any of these videos. And this has to be one of the funniest things. 2023 Fisker Ocean is a 550 horsepower Tesla Model Y killer. Elon commented with, "The default state of a car company is dead." They are filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Get this. In Delaware. In the statement, Fisker blamed market and macroeconomic headwinds that have impacted our ability to operate efficiently. The stock this morning dropped 54%. One reason why Tesla succeeded and other EV companies are struggling is because Tesla did not have to compete with Tesla. But all other EV companies, they have to compete with Tesla, which is extremely difficult. And I definitely agree with this. This won't be the last BEV bankruptcy. Any EV maker that is deeply loss-making, which is basically all of them, with high negative cash flow and dwindling cash reserves to face high bankruptcy risks. When Fisker first announced a high bankruptcy risk early in 2024, it still had several $100 million of cash in the bank. But remember that Fisker was rather small, and therefore just a few $100 million in the bank was enough for it to go bankrupt. But larger EV makers like Rivian or NIO, these can go bankrupt with $1 billion or even a few $1 billion because their expenses are so high. And of course, Rivian also has a lot of debt obligations. I would not be surprised at all if Tesla cuts the price of its vehicles a little bit in Canada and specifically in British Columbia. Oh, and Tesla actually just did reduce the price of the Model 3 rear-wheel drive and long range in Canada by $1,000. British Columbia, which is where I live, is an important market for Tesla, and BC government just changed EV rebate program, making the Tesla Model Y and 3 lose eligibility. The Model Y lost its eligibility because in BC, they will no longer classify vehicles as SUVs or station wagons, which could qualify for a higher maximum price, up until which you could still get the rebate from the government. It will now have two categories, cars and larger vehicles, and they are putting the Model Y into the cars category, which means it has to be under 50,000 Canadian dollars for it to qualify, but the Model Y is a lot more. Keep in mind, these are Canadian dollars, and the BC government would give you $4,000 in provincial rebates. Before this price draw that Tesla just made, the rear-wheel drive version would cost $51,000 basically, and Tesla just dropped the price by $1,000, so it makes perfect sense why Tesla would do that. So the rear-wheel drive model will continue to qualify for the rebates, but the long-range model, no more. Canada also has a federal rebate of $5,000, which remains available to Tesla. So in BC, you can get $9,000 off if you buy a Model 3. It's a pretty good deal. Troy explains how Tesla pulled off this move to make the Model 3 long range qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit in the US. Previously, it was using 2170 cells from LG, imported from South Korea, which don't qualify, but right now Tesla has some spare Panasonic 2170 cells from Giga Nevada because Model Y production at Giga Texas is lower than usual. So it looks like Model 3 long range has switched to Panasonic's 2170 cells, at least for the rest of the quarter, while 3 Performance was already using Panasonic cells. Now, if you remember, there were some changes made in battery origin requirements, which occurred a little while ago, which possibly could make South Korean batteries eligible. But Troy explains that LG Chem in South Korea uses separators and cathodes from China in their 2170 cells. The change in rules allows for trace amounts of materials from China. It's unlikely to apply here. And this is pretty insightful. Looking at past quarters, I know how many qualifying packs Giga Nevada produces per quarter. The VIN data shows that car production is clearly below that in this quarter, meaning they have spare Panasonic packs. So that's a pretty good update. A big shout out goes to Troy. Elon Musk drops some big news here, working on the Tesla Master Plan 4. It will be epic. Master Plan Part 1 and 2 were about cars, and number 3 was about energy. Number 4, perhaps, unlikely, I think, is going to be about AI, so robot taxis, maybe even Tesla bots as well. However, if you remember, on Tesla's website in 2016, in Master Plan Part 2. Elon did already talk about autonomy, so Part 4 is going to be likely more about robotics than about robotaxis. Robotaxis are likely just going to be, okay, well, that was already in Part 2, basically. So this sounds a bit more like a continuation of Part 2 as well. Also, how interesting that Elon is going to do Master Plan 4 after the vote. It's almost as if Elon is a lot more motivated now to get things done. I think that's definitely not a coincidence. Here's Master Plan 1, which was published in 2006, and now it has been fully achieved. Keep in mind, it took more than a decade to fully achieve this plan. Part 2 is still in progress, and Part 3 was a white paper with 40 pages. No specific goals really, but just how can we make everything sustainable. It proved that our world can be run on sustainable energy. And I can certainly hear complaints like this one. Interesting that Master Plan 4 is in the works when Master Plan Part 2 hasn't been fully achieved yet and Master Plan 3 came out last year. But remember, when Master Plan Part 2 was published in 2016, Tesla still hadn't completed Step 3, which was to produce and ram Model 3. Years later, Tesla did so very successfully. Imagine if you weren't allowed to plan ahead before finishing your last plan. You wouldn't really get very far, would you? We got deliveries from China. This time they were at 11,700 for the previous week. We know that Europe is going to impose tariffs on China, and that will include Tesla. So there is a possibility that Tesla is just rushing to export as many vehicles as possible right now, and therefore the local sales are lower. But even with that in mind, I would say that number is modest. I would agree with Gary. Another thing to keep in mind is that there was a Dragon Boat Festival in China, so naturally that will result in slightly less deliveries. 420,000 deliveries for this quarter still seems like a reasonable target, says James. Estimates from James generally are not bad. He's also poking fun at the new master plan, but even he is excited for the new master plan. Okay, we are now starting to find out which institutions voted in favor of Elon in 2018, but then flipped in 2024. One such institution is Alliance Global Investors from Germany. They hold 1.8 million Tesla shares. Very roughly, that's $330 million worth of Tesla stock. And integrity is the core principle of how we choose to conduct business at Alliance. It is mentioned 41 times in their code of conduct. Wow. So this is how they explain the rationale. Despite high quantum, we recognize the stretching nature of this compensation package and the exceptional contribution of Elon Musk to Tesla's value. In light of this unusual remuneration design, we would encourage further improvements to levels of independence on the board and removal of any conflict of interest in the way non-executive directors are compensated. I would like to point out that they said this in 2018, so they were aware of all of the things that the judge basically said, and yet they voted for. And here's their rationale from 2024. They just say, oh, our vote against Elon Musk is warranted. They don't really explain it much other than to say whether the initial approval was valid is a legal point for the courts to opine on. No surprise here really, but it's good to see this. The Tesla Model Y tops the list of most American-made cars again. So Model Y is number 1. Tesla Model S is number 4. And then we got the Tesla Model X at number 9. But it's a bit interesting that the Cybertruck hasn't made the list. And the Model 3 is not on the list, probably because of the Chinese batteries. The Model 3 was number 21. But Ford doesn't have a single vehicle in the top 25, and GM only makes their first appearance at spot number 23. So Tesla's lowest vehicle currently that's mass produced, the Model 3, is above GM's highest ranking vehicle. And let's see where the Cybertruck ranks once production is actually ramped. But Ford is definitely not the most American made. That's just pure marketing. Omar posted another video of FSD. It's the latest version, of course, and it's 39 minutes long roughly with 0 intervention, so that's good. A big new batch, a Cybertruck Foundation series invites just went out. This batch went out to people who pre-ordered as late as early 2022. There's still no FSD on the Cybertruck though, but Tesla says it will be available in an upcoming software release. Currently it doesn't have autopilot with auto steer. You only have traffic aware cruise control. Tesla will now begin introducing Powerwall 3 in the UK and Germany following following the US and Canada. Tesla also announced a partnership with Octopus Energy to bring Powerwall to homes across the UK and Spain. I think this is probably the best way to get Elon to work on another Tesla vehicle, which would have at least 3 rows. Hey Elon, this is a real issue. I'm expecting my second kid and I can't imagine having a third one. He drives a Model Y. He brings diaper bags, toys, towels, strollers, and he likes to bring his dog as well. So he needs a bigger vehicle and he's stuck with 2 kids because he won't buy a vehicle that's not a Tesla. The Model X is just too expensive for most people. Oh, Omar's cousin is having a third kid and had to trade their Model Y up for a bigger car, even though they would have preferred to stay with the Tesla brand. Someone says, this is a real thing. I didn't have more than 3 kids because I didn't want to have to drive a Suburban or a minivan. And yeah, I definitely agree. A Kia EV9 competitor would do very well for Tesla. This vehicle also sort of looks pretty good for a Kia and a vehicle that fits so many people. Whoa, some big news here. Nvidia has now surpassed Microsoft to become the most valuable company in the world with a 3.33 trillion market cap. In the meantime, Apple has suspended work on the Apple Vision Pro 2 due to slowing demand. It is now focusing on releasing a cheaper model in late 2025. All the people I know who bought it actually ended up returning it. Nvidia's CEO says humanoid robots will become as common as cars and there will be significant breakthroughs in robotics in the next 2 to 3 years, to which Elon replied with, they will be 10 times more common than cars. Let's assume for a moment that will actually happen. What do you think would then happen to Tesla's market cap? Tesla, of course, was basically the first company to enter the EV market, but that's just part of the auto market. But the humanoid robot market, Tesla is basically going to be one of the first companies to enter. And I liked how Elon explained during the shareholder meeting that Tesla is extremely well positioned for a humanoid robot that can be built affordably and which will work well, because you need to build basically everything from scratch. So a small startup is not really capable of building a good one. You need a lot of resources, and then you need to produce it at scale, which is extremely difficult, but Tesla already knows how to do it. It's not enough to just build a prototype. You need to build a prototype that can actually scale and be built over and over and over and over and over and over again at cheap prices. Elon replied with a yeah to, there are roughly 2 billion cars on Earth, so that would be 20 billion humanoid robots. Wow, I can't even believe this is a real thing. The new all-electric 2024 Mercedes EQB has now received its EPA range rating, and it's terrible. The cheapest model, which starts at $53,000, has 251 miles. Okay, that's the cheapest. The more expensive one, at $58,000, only has 205 miles of range. Who is going to buy that? On top of all of that, it doesn't even get the $7,500 EV tax credit. So you can get a Model Y. After the tax credit, it's only basically $40,500 and you get 308 miles of range. Why would you pay roughly almost $13,000 more and get a lot less range? In the meantime, Audi has introduced the new 2025 e-tron. This one has decent range, but it's expensive, really expensive. Elon now says that Tesla will again start giving out stock options to employees, but not to everyone. Over the next few weeks, Tesla will be doing a comprehensive review to provide stock option grants for exceptional performance. There will also be an ongoing program to award spot option grants for anyone who does something outstanding for the company. That's it for today's video. Make sure to like and subscribe. I just published another exclusive Patreon video, so if you are a Patreon, go ahead and watch that one right now. The title is So Much Flip-Flopping plus some of my FSD thoughts. By joining Patreon, you will have access to all of my exclusive videos on Patreon, as well as how much I am willing to pay for each Tesla share between 2024 and 2033. If you join the investor tier, you will also have access to my valuation model, where you will see all of my assumptions, including deliveries, the energy business, Tesla's future businesses like FSD, and of course much more. And then if you want to easily download that and put in your own numbers, then this third tier is for you. To all of my Patreon supporters, thank you so much. Make sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet as well. It's really important to like the videos because that makes it less likely that the channel will be shadow banned later, like my other big channel got shadow banned before from about 50% of my regular viewers. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.